Well, welcome to 2021. I know this was on your Christmas list. You could not wait until our first CIO EdTech Leaders webcast of 2021. It has happened. It is here. You're the thing you asked for the most is actually here, and it's actually happening. So thanks for joining us. We have our districts joining us. We have our Office of Education Technology staff. We've also, and they're on our Teams link here. We've also invited others beyond those, all of a variety of our CETS partners. These are other state agencies. These are vendor partners that we have that we work closely with. Anyone else beyond that is watching by our KD Media portal and by YouTube, and they'll be joining that way. We also have Go Soapbox up and available. We have some questions for you to respond to, but just like normal, is anything else that bubbles to the top, I'll be asking our staff to keep me up to date on that so we can respond to it to everyone. But as you know, during those, if you participate in these before, there are parts of our staff that are answering those live. So once again, thanks for joining us. I sent out the agenda along with our Go Soapbox questions, along with a summary of December. For you to take a look at, and just remind you, it seems like longer than a month ago that we met, but it hasn't been. And just like we've been doing, we've asked two of our districts to join us. This morning we have Pikeville Independent Schools and Shelby County Schools. Appreciate that. Have the superintendent and the technology team from Pikeville joining us this morning, and then from Shelby County, we have the chief operations officer and the technology staff joining us as well. So let me circle back to the beginning for Pikeville. I know Superintendent Trimble, but I also know the other Superintendent Trimble, his dad, who was a tremendous public servant in Eastern Kentucky in many roles as a teacher and as a coach and principal and superintendent there for so long. And then he I think he still does this, probably goes and helps out districts kind of subbing as a superintendent until they fill that spot. And I know he works for KVEC as KDBC. He does stuff for them as well. So big shoes to follow there, but you're ready to do it. So Superintendent Trimble, thanks for joining us this morning. I know you have also your technology staff with Neil Arnett and Brandon Blackburn joining us as well. So tell us about education technology in your district and just a variety of things you want us to be aware of and the other districts could get value of. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the introduction. And they would probably rather have my dad than me, but they got me. I've been very blessed to have good mentors in my career, and he's very much one of them. This is the first time I've gotten to be on here, and so I hope I don't mess this up. But Brandon and Neil are very nervous that I'm going to take the whole time. Neil wanted to send a PowerPoint to keep us on track, which really meant I don't want Mr. Trimble to talk the whole time. So I'm going to be really short. These guys do all the work, and I want to give them the opportunity to speak about our district. So I really just want to do some introduction, and then I'm going to get out of the way and let them talk about the work they do. We are very blessed to have the two guys here, and as Mr. Couch mentioned, they've held some office in different technology organizations throughout Kentucky, and so you know them very, very well. And I've gotten the opportunity over the last 6 months to get to know them well. And I know that this district is very well cared for from a technology standpoint. And we have two guys who are very passionate about what they do. As a matter of fact, Brandon had to leave class to do this. We've had a lot of conversation, but the one thing that he really has trouble letting go of is teaching computer science to high school kids because of his passion for it. And so I am very appreciative of that passion, and it shows in the work that we do. So Pikeville Independent, just to let you know, we're a very small district, 1,160 kids. So Shelby County is a little bigger than us, as they're going to present in a few moments. We have 621 K6, and we are a K6 712 district, 539 712. I've only been here since July, so I can say this. It's a very successful district with a strong history of success, and it's because there are great people here. This is a district that those who work here as team members are passionate about the success of kids now and in the future. And it's also a community that's passionate about kids. One of the first things that happened here before we were able to ask our city during the pandemic was they installed Wi-Fi at our parks and opened up the Appalachian Wireless Arena for our families to have a place to go. They actually told us about that. We hadn't gotten to ask them for help yet. And that's kind of the direction our city goes with education. They're very passionate about that, and we've been very blessed with that. And so one of the things that we want to talk about today is that pandemic. We know there's been a lot of discussion about that, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time. One thing that we chose not to do was to focus on going one-to-one with technology. Instead, our focus was to put technology in the hands of kids who didn't have access to it, and then to use funding instead of purchasing additional tools that maybe they wouldn't use, to purchase the proper software, the proper programming, and then to train our folks on how to use it. And so we have 1,041 Chromebooks. You heard me say we have 1,160 students. We're not that far from being one-to-one, but that's really not been our passion as much as it has, what are we going to do with that technology? And I think that's been the focus, and these guys can talk more about that because they've been hands-on in our buildings. Brandon's in our high school every day. Neil, their offices are Neil's in the elementary, their offices are there. They work closely with our teachers and our professional development. A lot of our professional development's gone online to allow them to have that access. And so that's been really important to us. So they're going to talk a little bit about that today, and I'm going to let them do that talking because I know Neil's getting nervous that I'm taking his time. The other thing that we're really working on is to place things online. We collect our own taxes, which has been interesting to me. I've never been in a district that does that. And so that means you have to stay open during a pandemic and even on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. So we've had to work schedules to make that work. But one of the things that we're working to do is to move a lot of things online. I said this the other day, and it made Brandon, Neil, and Courtney extremely excited. So excited that Neil gave me an actual word for it. I said, I hate paper. And I do. I hate paper. And so I think that as much as we can not use paper, we had someone apply for a job in this district. And currently our application process and our job posting process, other than on the CATS website, is not available through technology. And so that's one of the transitions we've made is we are almost finished with that training to be able to make that go live. We want people to be able to find our jobs. We want to be transparent. And so it's systems like that. We're using technology not only in our classrooms, but we're using it to try to be more beneficial to those who want to apply for jobs. We're using it to be more beneficial to our community. And it's called, I guess, digital efficiency. That's the word that Neil sent me. I guess I'm supposed to say things other than I hate paper. So they don't want me to sound crazy in front of the technology folks. So we're trying to be more digitally efficient. And we really are. Our board meetings are online, and that was a response to the pandemic, but it's now going to be a response to the need for transparency. They will stay online. And these guys do a great job of making that happen. I said this to them when we met the other day. You got to find really good church people to do your board meetings because when they have good graphics at church, they have good graphics in your board meeting. And these two guys do that for their local congregations. And so our board meetings have been available, and we don't want to just do them. We want to do them right so our community knows that we're passionate about the information that we share. And so we've really worked to be more digitally efficient. You're welcome, or thank you for that word, Neil, aka we don't use paper if we can help it. And our pandemic response has been about not only giving our kids technology, but giving them the resources and giving our teachers the resources to be able to use that technology to the very best that we can. And so that's that part of it. The last part that I'm going to allow them all their time, all the discussion is going to come from them and not me, is our K-12 computer science focus. That's been some really good work that's been done in this district prior to my arrival, and it continues today. And I've sat on a couple meetings with them and been involved in that. And these guys have been very passionate about that. And so we're really working to make computer science a strong part of our curriculum. So I'm really proud of the work that they do. I'm really thankful to be in a district that has valued technology, and we're going to continue to do that. We currently have more Windows computers than we do Macs, but I'm working on that. I'm a Mac guy, I'm an Apple guy, so I'm hoping we're going to continue to do that. But I'm going to turn it over to them, and I thank them for letting me join them today and brag a little bit on the district, and they'll be able to tell you so much more.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Trimble, and thank you to the Webcast team for allowing us to speak. And just learning more about our schools. And I'm going to jump in really quick so I can head back to class, and Mr. Arnett will clean everything up here and fulfill all the rest of our duties. I'm just so proud of our district, and I'm just especially proud of education, because I know from the outside looking in especially, it looks like education is maybe just trying to stand their ground and try to limit the steps that we may lose. But honestly, I'm seeing a lot of folks gaining some steps and taking steps forward, and that's exactly what I feel like we've been doing, especially with the computer science pathways that we've added. Mr. Belcher and I, and of course the district leadership team, have been trying to find the right time to expand our career majors and add these. And what better time than to teach new classes, especially very difficult, challenging classes, than at the beginning of a pandemic. And we went ahead and did that. And we added 2 new classes, and we added computational thinking, intro to programming to our class schedule, which I'm teaching actually right now. And we also took another step in our pre-engineering program. So that's actually 2 pathways in the last couple years that we've added just recently. And we even expanded our lab, even knowing that we may not even have students in the classroom. Mr. Belcher, Mr. Trimble, and several others helped redo our entire lab so it would efficiently support all these new motivations that we were going to have. And that was just really exciting to know that even though it seemed like maybe plans were going to be stalled a little bit, we kept going forward. And that was just really awesome. And I'm really excited for what's to come when we get a little bit closer to some sense of normalcy here. Another thing that just comes to my mind when I think about going forward, one thing that we've shared for the last few years is our digital opening day that we've been doing now for a little while. And we actually met Miss Belcher, Mr. Belcher, our instructional supervisors, Mr. Trimble, and of course, Mr. Arnett, all got our heads together and thought about how could we do professional learning and all of our PD, Flex PD, and we went fully digital in that realm. So we've got Google Classroom, Schoology courses. We have several things that provide opportunities for teachers to do this safely and to expand their knowledge in what they're doing. The district even moved forward in paying for every educator in our district to get their Google certification this year. And so another step forward when, everybody thought we might be losing some steps. And, another thing with esports, that's something I'm heavily involved in. And we had just gotten into it over the last couple of years. We changed into the platform with PlayVS, which is a partner with KHSAA. We wanted to get in the big leagues, if you will. And, we didn't know how we'd meet and get together. We finished 6th in the state with our League of Legends team, and we were 15th in the state with our Rocket League team. And we didn't get to see any full group at any one time, but through just the amazing blessings of technology, we were able to keep things together and keep moving forward. So I'm just so excited with what we've been doing with our educators, what we've been doing for our students, what we're doing for our community. And we're just doing a lot of great things. And I'm going to now turn a lot of this remaining stuff, there's a lot more to talk about, to Mr. Arnett, and he can kind of close us out here. And thank you so much again for allowing us to speak and get to know our district a little bit better. Thanks.
I'm getting a bad rap, I think, in some of these meetings, I believe. So I'm just going to mention a couple things here at the end. I'm not sure. Somebody's alarm clock is going off in the background. Sorry about that. I'm just going to mention a couple things like Brandon was talking about, and Mr. Trimble kicked off about our computer science pathway and kind of what we're working on.
We're supposed to get like $170
a lot of folks, focus on computer science at the high school level or the junior high level. But one of the things that we noticed probably about 4 or 5 years ago is that we really needed to start making a push to preparing our students for that computer science pathway at the K-8 level as well, and how we could start doing that. And, and I got to give major props to the team at KDE that worked on the new technology standards as well as the new computer science standards, especially those required technology standards. The areas they hit on in computational thinking and coding and making and STEM and those areas have really helped us push that discussion forward. And I got to tell you, that technology standards document, the new one, is phenomenal. And we can't wait to see that implementation this fall. We've already kind of started hitting the ground running with that. our STEAM team that we have here in the district with our science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. We've reached the point that the reading teachers and the librarians want us to add an R and call it STREAM. And then our social studies and our science teachers want us to add more S's to it. So STEM is just not really working anymore because we're really reaching a point of full collaboration. And that's our point now, is that it's fully integrated in every topic area. And we're giving our students opportunities to use those computational thinking skills to really teach a methodology and a strategy for critical thinking. And we do that through computer science and through making and STEM-related activities that we're integrating in all those subjects. So the one big thing that I just want to mention that at the elementary school, we're part of a $1.2 million partnership that's being funded in large part by the National Science Foundation. And we are working with Digital Promise, our school district, Floyd County Schools, with Denise Isaac and Mike Bell and Bobby and their team over there, as well as the South Fayette School District in Pennsylvania, which we're using as a model district that has a very robust computational thinking and computer science K-12 pathway there. So we're really focusing on building that. We've received about $200,000 between the two districts from the Steele Reese Foundation to build our STEM lending libraries, so where we're doing robotics and that sort of thing to build, these projects around science and math and social studies. And so that's been a really exciting endeavor for us. We're in year 2 of that partnership with the National Science Foundation and Digital Promise, where our goal is really to create a K-8 model in a rural school setting, both in Floyd County and Pikeville Independent, kind of showing the differences between those two size of districts, and really come up with a model that can be replicated to rural school districts around the country, to really show that pathway of how we can start to feed students into our pre-engineering and our computer science and our 3D game design programs that Mr. Blackburn works so hard on at the high school. And so, we're using micro-credentials as a part of that project. Our teachers are doing micro-credentials around data analysis, computing and algorithms, communicating with data. And so a large part of that is vertically aligning that curriculum. So that we're really excited about that. We're excited to be having that K-12 push, and we're really excited about all of the support that we get from our district administration to really make that a focus and teach our kids these skills and try and instill those, and give them the opportunities to create and to make and get those creative thinking juices going and working toward those pathways that we have at the high school. So thank you all again for having us today. We appreciate being here.
Thanks, Pikeville team. One of the things I'd mentioned, just to start from the back with I know Marty Park and his team is on there, worked a lot. And Sean is too, with computer science, the guidelines we've given and the standards and the technology standards, and also the, library media. What we've done with that one recently, I was just on a call where we got that all the way through the legislative process. So it's good to see that you all are taking advantage of that and appreciate that. That's a lot of good work. Of course, they worked, heavily with districts to create that. So it gives it a lot, so hopefully it should be valuable because we got a lot of your all's input and going down that path. The part from your all's feedback that I got, the top 5, and we're, the things that stood out to me, I'd like to mention in front of the audience. And this was, some of the things I saw across the state too. The communication during the pandemic, as you probably know, during this time, you probably can't over communicate, but, some people confess that you are. But that's something we even saw internal with our own staff, is the communication level during the pandemic level. Nothing's going to be 100% perfect, but they thought that was pretty good. The districts felt pretty well supported, as you did. And the funding level was from a variety of funds, at the federal level, especially came through with about $204 million in ESSER and in GEAR funds. I thought this was an important thing that you all mentioned, because when this was happening, we said, we really hope this holds up during the peak, because I'm going to kind of talk about what does this look like after the vaccines start getting in place. So that's one of the questions I'm going to have for both districts is, what does this look like? I'm going to share you some of the feedback that we got that's going to be shared with our state board. But the internet connectivity, knock on wood, has been pretty outstanding. Not like I say, nothing's 100% perfect, but pretty outstanding. We also did KEN upgrades, the Kentucky Educational Network upgrades along the way. As I mentioned, throughout, there's not one thing that we did not say we're going to stop doing because of the pandemic. Much like you all mentioned, we kept on doing things, and it's the things we normally would have done, and didn't do anything that said, you know what, when the pandemic's over, we're going to stop doing these. It really was that mindset. What is the way we want to operate in the short term and the long term? You're appreciative, and there was a 10% funds that we got at the KD level. They were for shared services for districts. So we tried to pick the things, and it's like anything else, is there other things that can be going toward this non-technology, but early on, we put our nose in it and say, hey, listen, there's some things technology-wise that we think can help districts, and you mentioned some of those in your feedback. Some of the things we did with Infinite Campus, with campus learning, the online registration that we did across state was a pretty big hit. We see that continuing on that we put in place. But you also mentioned, some concerns about what's the ongoing funding source of doing some of these things, which is obviously a good concern, that a valid concern of anybody that has. Phil Coleman's talk later on. You see it on the agenda talking about our relay deployment. I know you had some concerns about that and the rocket relay. So he's going to talk about that. Mike Lettingham's going to talk about. You talked about we want more options for the network components, and we did the bid. I can't remember how many years ago, 6-7 years ago, we did award 6, and they all chewed each other up. Is that particular item, more so than anything we do, that particular item seems to chew up, consolidate, go under. So he's going to talk about the bid that we have, and another up to 6 vendors being awarded with, I think it's 5 resellers with each. So we're trying to really expand that back out to address one of your needs that you identified there. So I appreciate the Pikeville team, but I'm going to stand by, because I'm going to ask you about 2 of these things about how does life look different now that the vaccines are starting to happen. My daughter and son-in-law, who are teachers in Western Kentucky, got their vaccine shot, which I am so appreciative of Kentucky making that a top priority for those that are involved with close interaction with students, whether it be teachers or other part of a district staff, being the first in line. I have a son who's a teacher in another state, and he's not in the front of the line. So people in Kentucky should appreciate the value that we're putting on those in the K-12 arena. Let's switch over to Shelby County. And Jill and Chad, thanks for joining us this morning. Jill, I'll let you start off, and Chad, you can jump in wherever you want.
Well, good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you guys today. Our superintendent was planning to be on here, but she is a little under the weather, so she's not going to make it on. So I've got, once again, just as Mr. Trimble stated, it's not us, it's the boots on the ground, and that's our tech team who keep us afloat, especially during this pandemic. I think they've totally risen to the top. A group that was behind the scenes, but the pandemic has shown that we can't get where we need to get without a strong tech team. And Chad Hebner is our coordinator for technology in Shelby County, and he leads that as a very forward thinker. Most of our decisions in our county have been based upon our strategic leadership plan. And so we became one-to-one. I know it's been at least 6 years. It might have been 7 years ago. So as we began to think K-12, one-to-one, MacBooks for most of our high schoolers, and then our elementary and middle schoolers have Chromebooks, one thing that came to mind very quickly when the pandemic hit is, how do we support our learners from home? And I'm going to answer your question quickly, Mr. Couch, and that is, we started a tech helpline immediately. That was one of the first things that came out of when everybody went home. How are we going to support it? I laugh because it's on my office wall, because it's not going to go away. That phone number is not going to go away. It's going to be there for the extent of learning in Shelby County. So I know that's something that's not going to go away during the pandemic, but we'll just have to figure out how we'll answer those calls, or how those calls will be dispersed when school is in session. Who's going to get those lucky numbers? Mm-hmm. But that's for sure a big piece. Chad, do you want to add anything about that help tech line?
The reason I'm muted is because it's going off constantly right now. It's virtual. So what we did is we made a virtual number just in case. So that number is landing on phones within and you hear the doorbell too. There's people visiting us coming here for repairs throughout this. They call the tech line. We've been using a product called Wait While that allows us to queue people come to visit us, and 2 for every half hour, so that we are compliant and we don't have a whole lot of people here waiting. So that doorbell you just heard is somebody here for repair. But again, we can land that number anywhere. We knew that we had to have it and be mobile. So Ms. Tingle challenged us. We did that, and we have a couple of mobile people now. They could not report to work, and they're taking calls, booking calls, and putting stuff in White Wow. So it's working. It's working. Maybe a little bit too well. It's working.
The other piece is we kind of have some domino effects in regards to what do we need. So our kids have devices, but we are a district of about 7,000 students and then another 1,200 staff. And we realized that a lot of our staff and some of our students did not have access to the internet. Part of it has to do with the rural community and who provides services, as many of the rest of us in Kentucky also face. And so 2 years ago, we joined, at the time it was Sprint, the 1 Million Project for hotspots. And we're, to my knowledge, the only school district in Kentucky who have jumped on board with that. And that's who we get our hotspots from for free. It's based on your free and reduced lunch numbers. It's an application process, but it has served us well during the pandemic. Unfortunately, like most people, you can't get hotspots because it's a hot commodity, but that has been a wonderful resource for us. And Chad, they've changed names. It's T-Mobile now.
Yeah, it's now the 10 Million Project. They've upped the game. We've given out, through the 1 Million Project and the 10 Million Project, hundreds of hotspots. And again, to Jill's point, they're free. So I don't have to, I do get reports on how much they're using and what they're seeing. But other than that, it's free. We do have a system that we keep track of everything, all of our devices. And so it's in there and it's to the child, so we know who has it. But other than that, it's served us well. And then with the 10 Million Project, we're, like Jill said, we're coming on. We've got our first 150. We got about 250 more to go to get in and get disseminated. But it's been a good partnership with both Sprint and T-Mobile.
Did you have any problem with the free service being offered and people turning it down? Was that a significant problem or not?
No. We have a significant waiting list, actually, people wanting them. And like Jill stated, it's just been a slow process because of, supply and demand. But we do have more people who wanted it. And we've had people take them. And because of where they are, they brought them back and we've reissued them. It's not a foolproof solution because we do have some areas that are way out. And there's just no service, but we're thinking through that, how we can do that. And I think Jill will touch on that here in a minute. But with far as the 10 Million Project, I think we have like another 150 even post what we have coming in. So we're going to keep working with them, try to get these things out.
Well, the reason I phrased it there, that's good to hear in Shelby County. That's not a problem. I have an aunt and uncle that live in Shelby County, so I'm aware. They live in the Pleasantville area. Oh, yeah. Which is a difficult spot. I'm always pretty surprised of the difficulty part of it. And to be honest with you, even though you're a rural county, there are some rural counties that have more of an issue than others. And surprisingly, Shelby County is one of those that I know you're trying to do everything you do to get it out there. We're down to about, out of our 648,000 students, about 13,000 that don't have internet beyond the school campus to do schoolwork. Which is encouraging, but as we're talking with all the districts, there's X% that said there's certain parents that says they don't want it; they only want paper or in person. Which even when we go back to regular NTI, that could be problematic. So that's good to hear. That's not a issue there. But I try to set people's expectations. We will probably not get it to 100%, 100%. I mean, we can get close to that, and that's our goal. 98% is pretty close to 100, but we're going to try to get. But we're going to have X percent that are pushing back, or whatever reasons. We know certain districts they've not even picked them up until multiple times, and so you can do what you can do. So that's good to hear that you guys are taking advantage of it. So I'll let you proceed. Go ahead, Jill.
Well, I'm trying to lead up the story too. So when we found out about the last mile, we already had devices. We had a source for hotspots. So what's next? And when I talk about this forward thinking piece, this is where Chad came in. We looked at the specs, what could we use the money on, and brainstormed about how do we provide to our low income families we're on US 60. So how do you use US 60 corridor for help? And the brainchild of that was, could we look at our housing units, talking about low housing units, Section 8 housing, to take what are known as Arubas or Wi-Fi access to these communities. And what started off as, okay, do you think you can pull this off, led to a meeting with LG&E, KU. Tim Sizemore was a huge help in all of this. Charlotte Chowning jumped in. We had our local community. I know Mr. Trimble talked about that as well. You got to have that community support about how do you make this all happen. And I've talked so much about access to polls. I wasn't sure I worked for a school district anymore, because it seemed like every conversation was around who owns the polls. And strangely enough, it's not who you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
So after lots and lots of conversation, we realized the polls that we needed access to were, in fact, owned by LG&E and KU, but they're located on private property. So needless to say, I won't get into all of that, but it has taken months to figure out who the players are in the game to be able to get access. And then we're working with AT&T. All the equipment's been purchased. It has been set up. And Chad, if I'm not mistaken, they're going to be installed this week.
Yeah, we're going to start installing them this week. We have 5 neighborhoods that we targeted with this mesh project. So we're looking at between 500, 600 kids who will automatically have it. The way that we're designing it, they'll just open their Chromebook and ta-da, they got internet, right? So I'm excited. I'm very much blessed the leadership we have here to get behind me for all these projects. But this one was hard.
Are you there?
Go ahead. We got some that didn't know they were on.
So yeah, I mean, we're right in the precipice of getting those out this week, starting climb poles, get them installed, and hopefully next week that'll be completed, and I start getting the data that the kids are attaching. So,
I'd like to hit on it because what I'm using is part of our agenda anyway. I'm going to bounce it off to you all, and everyone else can join in. There's an organization, and you all can do a Google search on this. It's called the Pegasus Institute. They're out of Louisville. And they did a study of how do you expand at a faster rate broadband in Kentucky. And they came up with 3 recommendations. One of those is just making pole access a lot easier.
Yes.
Because that has really slowed down the implementation. And so that's one of the things what can we do in certain areas to speed that process up and make it a much faster a process that's out there. The other teaching point I would make, and Charlotte's been part of this, is when we, you've heard me say it, it's always worth saying, we became the first state back in the 1990s to have internet to every school district. At that time, in the 1990s, the school system, for the most part, was the only place in the entire county that had a high-speed connection, what we called high speed then. So you had, and even though we said the school system really try to refrain from, and this was in the mid 90s, becoming the internet service provider for homes. I mean, actually taking the internet that comes into the school building and extending it out. We had one district that did that. This was pre-E-rate time, because E-rate strictly prohibits that. And what they did is they got, the beat down from people saying, "You're my internet service provider," directly. I mean, it'd be like me here at my house, stringing a line to people in our neighborhood. If they had any kind of problem with their internet, they come to me, not the internet service provider. I take on that responsibility, and our staffs are already tiny. And to take that on again and actually be the tool belt fix of that is a huge responsibility, along with the security aspects of it. As most of you know, we put a security bubble around K-12 for all the cyber attacks that are coming, because they're coming full court press. But also it's problematic from an E-rate, very problematic, because when E-rate was established back in the late 1990s, they did not want the school systems to be in competition with private industry, meaning they did not want you to extend your school network and make that also go out into the homes. They actually said wanted separate, internet service providers, which you've done. You guys have done that. So it's just worth a reminder. I know we have people coming and going. They don't understand the E-rate rules from a pure technical point of view. They say, well, let's just extend the network coming into the school building and run that out to homes. And so that puts you in the internet service provider business, which puts you very much crossways with E-rate as a major no-no. So it allows me to do a couple teaching points there. So you all have done it. When we have districts across the state that have done this right, as we're saying, we're at 98%, but we want as close to 100% as we can get. So it's going to take, in the low income housing areas, trying to put that in place. That's exactly the right thing to do. But when you start going down that path, you realize how complicated it is, and maybe why this hasn't been done for the past 30 years, even though we've had it in place. Now people are, but the good part about all this is put it on people's radar screens like never before about the importance, just not for the students, but for the homes in general. So that's been a good thing of the pandemic. As you always say, try not to waste a good crisis. And so I think the good part of this is it's brought things to light. And I'm going to be talking a little bit later about other funding that has been made available, substantial funding to go toward last mile beyond the school campus that we hope them be helpful for the next at least next 3 years.
Well, I'll be more than happy to share what I learned, because so many things we do in K-12 education, there's not a manual to look at to tell us how to do it. And so we started with the city, thinking the city was going to be the keys to the kingdom, and learned very quickly that they didn't have any more clout than we did to try to make it happen. So as Charlotte would say, God willing and the creek don't rise. It should all go down in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll be able to advertise to those families how to access those services. So we've not done a public announcement at all. Our PR team and our tech team have different views on what to do there. I know there's always a great need to showcase the work, but we want to make sure it works properly first before we celebrate. We don't want to celebrate too soon. I think you all understand in the tech world what I'm saying.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. It's a lot more complicated than people think it is.
So that's kind of, we could go on and on, but I know for the sake of time, I knew you all wanted to hear about that last mile piece. Yeah. And it's.
Well, I look at things there with you. I appreciate, Chad, I know you're not doing anything else, so I appreciate your feedback for us. I appreciate your thing, our communications being well, the coordination, the teamwork, and your appreciation for Charlotte. I do find that across our state. And it's something unique, Kentucky, to the other 49 states where we have our field staff, our KEs. I don't know any other state that does that. I don't know why they don't do that. But it's a model that works extremely well. Of course, you have to have the right people that do that, and which we do. So I appreciate you giving high fives to Charlotte. I know you have a strong security background. We try to spend a lot of time and energy on that. Can always get better in that arena. And, the last mile beyond the campus is something that we hit on. Tech certificates for the tech staff, I think, is also very important. I heard, Pikeville talk about that. That's important for them short term and the long run. And I guess unfortunately you are the bearer of bad news for superintendents. So we'll try to find another way to get some of that information to them. Let me share something with you that's going to go out to our state board on February the 3rd. And what the commissioner did, he sent out something to a large group and saying, it's similar to what we did is for technology, but it was on a bigger scale. What should we stop doing? What should we keep doing? And what should we start doing? So I'm going to share with you, make sure I pick the right one. Like I say, this is in draft form. So please don't, as David Couch said, kind of thing. I'm going to show you the results. You can see, and this is going to be going public, I think, around February the 3rd. So like I say, it's still in draft form, but I wanted you aware of it since it involves education technology. But you see, these individual groups were asked for their feedback, just to kind of see it. And so with this tool, you can go individually and look at the responses of each one of those. But I'm just going to give you overall what they said. So these are the things to keep doing and stop doing, which I find interesting because some of these, run into each other. So we can tell from the responses from parents and even from students, they want to get back to as much as in person as possible, and that's understandable. The other part I thought was just as important, and we know when they're going back to in person, those on this call, there's tons of technology used in the school building. So your work is there, but they also want to keep providing effective virtual and distance learning options. Because even through the course of the rest of this year, even as the vaccines start coming more and more into play, not all the parents at the homes are getting them, especially some elderly, maybe grandparents are really taking care of the students, nor are the students at this point. So there is X% of parents or guardians that are choosing, you know what, I want this virtual option until there's a high percentage of the population, maybe in the July, August timeframe, that gets it. So for the rest of the school year, but you're definitely seeing they don't want that option. But at the same time, and this is a mixture of all of them, and once again, you can drill down, is stop doing it. It's not stop, and I wanted to make sure you understood, this is not stop doing it forever. This is just, for now, is mainly them saying is we want to get back to as much in person as we can, which is very understandable. The other part that I'll screw down and you'll see in this is it's much like what we do. We say, well, we do well, not well. What should our goals be going forward? This is on a bigger scale of things going forward. And I suspect as we take a look at the new round of funding, and we're going to talk about that in more depth here, but the previous round of federal funding was around for Kentucky. If you look at the combination, was around $200 million. The next round of it's $1 billion. So it's 5 times more. So I suspect that you'll be seeing that funding in school districts start to be used for these types of things. Not that these go away either. I think they say you'll go toward these too. Keep doing that well is what I say. What do you want to keep doing it well? And then start doing this or start improving on this is where I suspect it'll be seen. The other part that's going to be interesting to me, and I'm going to let our 2 districts just answer it, is as much as they see, given this feedback, once again, if you drill down on just the parents, for example, the family and guardians, they are very, very interested in going, back in person. Very, very quickly. A very high percentage of them are. Right now, before, I would say when we started the school year, it was like 70-30. Those that went back in person still had 30% that chose to go virtual on average. Maybe it was up to 35%. As the vaccine starts happening, where a high percentage of teachers and staff that are in close contact with students are given the opportunity for the vaccine, does it change those percentages at all? Does it go from maybe, I know Shelby County mentioned 20%, does it go down to 10%? Or you suspect it'll be that for the rest of the school year? So I'm going to stop sharing. So I like our 2 school districts. Anyone else, we see in the chat, or you mentioned it in Go Soapbox, is what impact do you think the vaccine and your staff getting the shots and those that work will impact the model going forth does it change the percentage you think of students at home, or does it stay about the same as you see going forward? Was there anything surprising? And by the way, don't tell Commissioner Glass I just showed you all that. That's top secret. And once again, it's still in draft form. So what are your thoughts as you saw that? And then just my comments about the vaccine. So I'll let Superintendent Trimble, I'll let you go first. What are your thoughts?
We actually started vaccinating this week, the first shot on Thursday and Friday, and we had a significant number of folks in our district who decided to do that. I think that we're very clear on the fact that what our parents want is 5 days of in-person instruction for every single kid. We're well over 80% right now in our buildings. I don't know that we're going to have a great influx this year. In addition to who's here now, because we had some return after the break coming in January, and I think that our online virtual academy has been good. We decided to partner with Edgenuity, and then on top of that to place a human element to it, and so I do think that those who have been in it have felt like it's been successful, and so I think that we have a nice mix of folks who are able to do what they want to be doing right now. We were able to be in person from September until Thanksgiving, and then we were able to return last week. And so I don't know that we're going to have an influx of folks. I think that that's a credit to the team here that we're providing the resources that need to be provided so folks can feel like they're successful. So I don't get
that supports kind of what we saw here is we want to be in person, but also keep a very good, distance and remote learning option as well. And, beyond the finish of this school year, I foresee that going forward. What we found is there's a percentage of students that really excelled in this environment. They did not excel, they excel better than a traditional classroom setting. And so I do see a percentage of parents wanting this model going forward. It's not going to be near what it has been during the pandemic, obviously, but we foresee that being part of it going forward. How about in Shelby County, your perspective, Jill?
Well, I think the biggest piece is going to be until the regulations, well, it really isn't regulations, but until we know what is going to change after you have the vaccine. I mean, right now it's still masking and it's still 6 feet apart even after the vaccination. So until some of those restrictions change, I think we'll probably stay at the 80-20. Our biggest piece, and I don't know about Pikeville, but when we had to close the last time, it's because we didn't have enough adults. I mean, I was teaching kindergarten. I had ATC kids. I mean, everybody was trying to cover. So it's when you ran short on adults. So and the quarantine's not changing either. So until some of those restrictions are let up, I don't see those numbers changing drastically. We just have a lot of people who we categorize as red. They're just worried. And so there's a whole lot of mental health that I see that's also risen to the top that we're going to be needing to support our families, our students, and our staff members on. Yeah.
Well, thank you, in Pikeville and Shelby. You can join us anytime during the rest of this time of this. But thank you. Thank you for sharing what's going on in your district, and let us ask some of these other questions that's going on. We're going to proceed on, but feel free to jump in any time you like during the rest of this. So we're going to talk about education technology funding. I know during the superintendent's webcast last week they talked about this. I'm going to hit on some of the things they talked about, and Superintendent Trimble or Jill, if you see anything I'm saying that's incorrect that you've heard from other sources of your angle that you've heard from us, please let me know. Mike Lettingham, I'm going to ask you and Amy to join us now about the EdTech funding. And Lisa Moore, I know you're on here as well with the legislative session. Of course, the governor's office budget pushed through their initial proposal. It goes through the House and through the Senate. I think the part that I noticed when the governor did, and they always do this every time there's a budget, talks about what are what's the perspectives for the rest of the year, for the next 2 years typically, but this one's different for what is it for this coming year. And the financial situation is much better in Kentucky than we anticipated it was last March. It would be around this time, which is great news. The state revenues have come in better than predicted, but also you have this influx of new money. As I mentioned before, it's $1 billion, close to $1 billion. It's a little bit less than that of dollars in new federal funds. We call it CARES 2.0 or CRISA, Corona relief, and it's got a whole other kind of thing there, which has ESSER and it has gear funds and last mile. So we have Mike Lettingham on here. Mike, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here, David.
So I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about the rest of the things you want to talk about with the funding part, and I'll jump in where necessary.
Well, I mean, specifically the things I wanted to hit on was for the what I always just refer to as the $8 million last mile internet funding program, and that program, the date that was identified for that program was the end of December to expend those funds. That obviously has allowed us the opportunity to allow districts to have more time for their plans, their approved plans that they've submitted. They will be able to take a little bit more time to utilize those dollars if they weren't able to spend all of those dollars during that time frame. It was intended to be for this school year, even though for all intents and purposes, the blanket extension of a lot of the dollars went beyond that. We still do encourage folks to target those funds to be expended during this school year. So if you, for whatever plans, you've submitted, have approved, the dollar amounts that are associated to those, if you weren't able to spend all those dollars, you can exercise some more time to do so. We've seen, I think it's about $1.5 million of funds being requested to be reimbursed through that program so far. So obviously districts are in the process of seeking those reimbursements. That's again something that the time frame's been extended on, is that you previously had until a date in February, I don't remember exactly what it was off the top of my head, maybe in February 1st, to request to receive your refunds for those dollars spent. So you'll have a longer time to do that as well. And then I guess part of that as well is we are continuing to work, and we may talk about this separately, David, where we're continuing to work with KET on the data casting initiative, which is also utilizing some of those dollars that were not previously identified and approved as part of individual district plans. So I don't know how much you intended to dive into that, where we're at with that, but that's a continuing effort.
Right. So let's spend a little time on it. So going back, we'll talk about, I call this LMI 1.0, is in the August timeframe, late August timeframe, we became aware of a certain funding source, which was different from the CARES fund. It's Coronavirus Relief Fund is what it's called. So it's separate than CARES, but it had a shot clock on it that we were told that it ended on 30 December 2020. And there was no guarantee that it would be extended. We said it's possible. People will be interested in it, but you can't count on that 100%. So there was some time frame. I don't know. I think it was October that we asked districts which one are interested in it, apply for it, and we got a total of around $5.7 million of the other $8 million that we had of folks that says they were interested in doing it. So we were interested in not letting that money expire, because it's a kind of funding source that if you don't spend it, it's gone. So that's when we identified the Kentucky Educational Technology Initiative, to where it's just not the short term, but more also the long term, of a way to reach certain students. They do not have internet beyond the school campus, and they may be in an area that they won't get a last mile wired or even wireless for a period of time, but they can get a KET digital signal to their home wirelessly, that it can be received wirelessly and converted over. So we found out, I think it was on December 28th, that it had been extended. The money, that funding source, had been extended. This was talked about during the superintendent's webcast. The intent is for those that have already spent it, you have a little bit longer to apply, to get reimbursement for it. I encourage you to do that as quickly as possible. For those of you that signed up for it, and didn't spend it all and thought it all had to be, spent by, December 30th. You and the districts that got that prior approved in the $5.7 million, you have a longer time to do that. really is appropriate, and we're going to really push for that to be done for this school year, the remainder of this school year, for any funds that you would have remaining, given the extension goes into this a good part of this calendar year. So that's a good news. For those that there's not a new pot of money to give out with this. Even though the date has been extended, the $2.3 million is dedicated for the KET initiative, and the $5.7 million is dedicated for those that signed up by a certain date to go toward you. The flexibility you have is you have longer to apply to get the money you've already spent, or you have a little bit longer to spend it. And once again, I didn't give that high odds of being extended. I'm not sure what it is. Looks like they waited to the last second. I can't remember if it was December 28th or 29th to give an extension, but typically they don't wait that short notice. But the good news is they did, and I'm next year we'll reinforce that. Mike, any other comment? I'm going to circle back to the new funding. Any other part about the LMI that we need to mention?
On that, I think as you emphasized, we heard it at the last second, just like anybody else that heard it. I mean, there was no prior knowledge of that date of when they identified that was extended, because we know we got questions prior to that about that December 30th date, and again, we didn't know that until the last day or 2 days before, and again at that point didn't even know really what that meant. So
yeah, the we'll call this CARES 2.0, or CRISA as it's new, is what people refer to this as. I suspect the ESSER funds, much like will be 5 times as much as they were last time. The ESSER funds for Kentucky K-12 was $174 million. I suspect it's 5 times more for this new rounding of funding. As you all that recall, that could be spent on a wide variety of things within a district, including a wide variety of education technology things, whether it be computers, whether it be anything you want to enhance within your buildings. The nice part about this new wave of money, its shot clock is not really short. It ends in September of 2023. So you have an extended period of time. Obviously, the first round of CARES money was September of 2022. This next round of close to $1 billion in total, which includes GEAR funds as well, goes to September of 2023. So much like you did last time, start letting some leadership folks know in your district some things that you would like to do that just don't address a short-term issue of the things that they need to address. And I showed some of those a little bit earlier on the stop, start, and keep chart that I showed there of what you're doing supports that within your district, whatever the angles that you're going after. The GEAR fund is, I'm not sure, the last time there was $30 million for Kentucky K-12. It had 2 focuses. One was on technology, particularly distance and remote learning. As we talked about a little bit earlier, there's going to be less of an emphasis on that as we get more vaccines and more people come back in person. It's not necessarily be 100%. It may be 20 or 30%. We go back to that model. And like on a snow day, we go back to, if it's a snow day, it's used by a higher percentage, obviously, or a flu day like it was in the past. We'll go back to normal times. To my knowledge, nothing has been identified of what the area of focus will be for the GEAR. Whether technology will still be part of it, it'll be something different. There is also a separate funding source, which I call Last Mile Internet Initiative 2. It is $3.2 billion has been identified, and this is nationwide, so this is just not for our state. This is nationwide. It's $50 per month for internet service, $100 for the end device. It's mainly focused on those that are low income, that are out there. Like I say, it's $3.2 billion, which is separate. It's above the $1 billion I mentioned before. So definitely this got on the radar screen of folks, the importance of having last mile access beyond the school campus being put in place. There's also a 10% fund associated with that. This is for our OET staff that are watching in our districts. As I mentioned before, the 10% funds that K, the agency, had was mainly for, I can't know if anything was just for K, the agency, or anything went to that. It was, what is a good shared service that we can do statewide for districts? And we talked about a few of those. We did the online registration, the campus learning, as an example, that, the relay service, we expanded that out. to keep that going. And there's some other ideas that we have of what is a good use of that funds of something we should do statewide that can last for the next 2 or 3 years. And be interested in your inputs to that. You can put that on Go Soapbox or send that to your KE as well as a shared service that we could keep doing. And that's our intention, to be honest with you, for me to expand the types of things that we're already doing with the funds. We're spotlighted. Your video is highlighted for everyone in the meeting. So I'm not sure you did that. That's a large chunks of money that are out there. And I encourage you, just like before, if you've not thought about it, go talk with your leaders. If you have some things you've wanted to do, this is probably once in a lifetime type of amount of money that can go towards something that can do good, just not in the short term, but the long term. So think through it through those lenses. And I know, as was mentioned before, think about it too. What would be the ongoing funding source to fund it if you did it? So we just can't think of in short term. If we do it, is the leadership committed to ongoing funding it, whatever is put in place? Because you can't really put something in place that doesn't have an ongoing funding source identified or committed to, because it'd just be turned off and wasted. Mike, you also want to talk about the second CATS offer and E-rate. So this is a good time for you to give districts an update on that.
Well, yeah, I'll real quickly mention that we do plan to move forward with the second CATS offers this month. So we'll be acting on those over the next couple of weeks. We will move forward with that at $7 per ADA. As everyone remembers, the first offer we did at $7.50, which was a little bit less than what we originally had projected. And our intention is with the third offer that we will do sometime in the April timeframe, we will, basically true up whatever we're able to do for the total year. Our original projection was 9 for the first offer, 7 for the second one, and 5 for the third one. And so again, we reduced that first one to 7.5. We'll move forward with the first one was 7.5. This one we will do at 7. And then the third one we will true up, so I anticipate the third one will be more than 5. Now, whether it will be $6.50 to make up that total $1.50 or not, or whatnot, we can't say for sure yet. So, but that is our intention, is to move forward with the second one. Regarding E-rate, the window is now open for applications for the upcoming fiscal year. So obviously, we encourage districts to be on top of that. We've got training sessions and basically open office sessions that Scott Kane and Caprice Gay are doing in coordination with the CATS engineers, helping participate in those as well, to provide guidance and training to folks that need that on, how to engage in that process. Obviously, we got some folks that are fairly new to it, and then we've got folks that have been around for a while and understand all the logistics associated with the E-rate filing. And I'll hit on another topic around awareness for E-rate around the networking contracts whenever I talk about the contracts and RFPs here in a little bit.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Marty, can you show the responses to our Go Soapbox questions 1 and 2, since they're related to finances, before we move on? And you may have to make that bigger. When you get it, can you make those a little bit bigger? All right, there you go. That looks good.
Yeah, so David, here's question 1. This was directly relating to the new additional funding source.
Yeah.
We're referring to as CARES Act 2.0 or CRISA.
Yeah. So the best I can tell is the ESSER funds have a tremendous amount of flexibility, even the second round of them, which was the intention of the federal legislature. So I think that's going to go forth, and that worked out, I think, pretty well the first time. As I just say, try to get your voice in there. This is the good time. I would also say this is a word of warning for the technology folks. You're probably going to get bombarded by tons of vendors.
Yes.
If you thought it was bad before, when there's 5 times more funding, you're going to have an enormous amount of vendors coming to you or circling to your superintendent and trying to bypass you, trying to sell a bunch of stuff. And so you just have to say, is this really the best for our district is the best in the long term as our funding source to sustain it's all those types of things. But I suspect you will get vendors absolutely wearing you out. And I can just tell from in this short period of time since they made the announcement, all the vendors from every angle, with all these solutions. And to be honest with you, they're a little bit step behind. The vendors that I've had wear me out is saying you can see the importance of cloud computing. You now need to get on cloud computing, not understanding it's the reason Kentucky was probably the best position in the United States and the reason we were able to pivot so quickly for the agency in our school districts, because we are mainly cloud-based, primarily cloud-based in everything we do. So they're about 10 years behind. 70% of the stuff I'm getting is about that. Another high percentage is about selling security stuff. For the most part, that we already have in place that our cloud providers already do, and they do pretty well. But I suspect you will absolutely be worn out when there's $1 billion coming in, with everybody that's wanting to meet with you. And as I always tell folks, they want to meet with me to talk about our goals and priorities, which is probably the worst thing to say I want to meet with you, because we do it we tell them, watch these webcasts, look at our master plan. You can get what our goals and priorities are. You don't need to meet with me to hear that and then talk about how your stuff addresses it. And we talk about there's a legal purchasing mechanism, and is there a funding source initially and ongoing to sustain it. So I hope you keep in mind you'll probably have tons going full court press to meet with your superintendent, your chief academic officer, your teachers, your principals, and so you may want to try to get ahead of that because they see a whole big pile of money that you may need to educate your folks on initial and ongoing costs. They're well-meaning, but there's not an ongoing funding source. So why do that to that scale? So, Marty,
David, I just want to point out it's awesome that with over 55 responses that we're looking at right around 75% or so of folks who have at least touched on it in some regard. So either just briefly or in depth, and that's really poignant, especially since this was really just released days ago, and so that's really great. I think it's it's as more and more folks, as we're showing it on screen, we're seeing more responses come in, and that's great. So getting out in front of it as much as possible, and thinking about how, as you mentioned, the span of things that you can do, ideas, strategies that you can implement with this funding. I did want to mention that we have a target to release, KDE has a target to release some additional guidance or upgrade. I call it upgrade, the guidance that's already available to include this new funding source. So I know there's a lot of guidance documents out there, but this is a guidance document that kind of points to eligible or uses of these funds. And so that will be upgraded to include this new funding source, to include things like the second question, David, that really gets at the ideas of learning loss. And if it's okay, I just wanted to mention, as you pointed out, there's a lot of folks who will throw ideas at you on ways you can spend and use this money in the best way for kids. But one thing that we are really working towards in OET and our field staff and throughout the state is that to target on the things that you believe are working, to keep it, targeted at that fine set of, tools or applications or digital resources that make sense, as opposed to a bunch. So targeted in as much as possible. So here are the results for question 2, David.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. And that's going to be a big part of the funding is learning loss. So thank you. Awesome. Last part about the funding before we move on to talk about internet safety and Lightspeed Relay is you'll be hearing about, and I talked about, I believe, last month, but there's a bid that went out. And this is not done by the agency, but it's just in general to try to find out a speed test to different areas around our state, internet speed tests. So you may be seeing that announced in the media about, trying to get data in different parts of our state of what's the internet speed. This has really nothing to do with the school systems. They're aware of what we have. This is really to the home. So this internet speed to the home. So trying to get people to participate in that to try to see where the areas of need are. So let's talk about Senate Bill 230. That was what happened way back in 1998 around internet safety. As you know, Kentucky became the first state to have all of its districts and schools connected to the internet. And obviously there was natural interest in doing things to make sure that we're doing everything we can as best as possible. There's nothing 100% to protect students, but also I would say adults, and make sure they're focused on the right things with this thing called the internet. At that time, a lot of people saying, what is the internet? But the reason I spend a little time on this is as people come and go within districts, as people come and go within state government, I always want to cover, and it's important for us to cover the things we already have in place. I taught those are historic achievements in our timeline, because we did things so long ago, and we're still doing them, that people don't realize we've already done them and have them, and they're working well. Not 100% perfect, but they're working well. And this is another one to where something recently happened where well-meaning people in different parts outside of KD agency didn't think we were doing anything with internet safety, and thought all these years we didn't have anything in place. So I had to remind them of the things we've done with accept use policies. When this started, but way back in the mid-90s, our number one way to address it, and still is, an accept use policy. That's around this, the code of conduct for students and around teachers. And so this wasn't just the students, it was teachers as well, and adults, I should say, just not teachers, but adults as well, is what is acceptable and appropriate use of using when using these tools. And it's usually tied to code of conduct. So these are typically the things you would do even in the paper world. So that's why I always try to take people back to. And don't try to find a technical solution for a behavioral problem 100%. I mean, technical solution half, but count on a solution for a people problem, behavioral problem. But folks wanted a internet content management system. They wanted a filter in place. At that time in the 90s, the filters were they blocked a lot of the good stuff. I mean, they didn't have the specific things they can do today, which they've improved drastically since the mid 90s, as you would expect. So there was a lot of good, appropriate sites that were blocked when you're trying to block inappropriate ones, which is still not 100% perfect, but it's got 100% better since the mid 90s. And so there's a requirement in the law that the KD agency provide a tool to districts. And that tool, for us right now is Lightspeed. Districts that choose something other than that pay for that 100% on their own. And we have a few districts. We don't have very many that have chosen to do that path. And it's got down to a small number. And especially with the things we're doing with Relay, it's getting down to even a smaller number, a 2 or 3 number, a number of folks within the state to put that in place. But we also did things beyond that. The digital driver's license, Murray Park, I know you're involved with that in the University of Kentucky, something that's not just used here in Kentucky, but across the nation. It's just reminding people of the good elements of being a digital citizen as you're immersed in a technology society. So I've had to spend some time, educate folks. I also tell them that the technology staff is not the one going through these logs. We're not the internet police. And we don't have people just sitting there, that's all they're doing. But obviously that you can request that and see that if you want to. And that's for KD agency, because we use Lightspeed services as you all do, and just reminding them. But the other part that the service does is it does tracking. So if someone were to defeat the filter, and there's all types of news sites that pop up all the time. And so it helps you kind of see where people are spending their time. They're not accidentally bumping into it, but they're spending an enormous amount of time on it, but also non-work related types of services. Are they spending 8 hours of workday on ESPN or a shopping site? Everyone occasionally does, cross that line, and they'll be doing some non-work related types of things, but it's very minimal. And not to make sure it's not, it takes up a lot of time and energy. So that's to educate folks. And I have to regularly tell folks we already have some things in place. That's what that timeline does. And we're always going to get better. But Phil, can you give us an update on where we're at with their Relay implementation across the state?
Sure, David. So phase 1 of the Relay project is and the intent is to get the Relay agent on every district device. So since March of this year, or of last year, it's been almost 2 years. I mean, been almost a year now, minus a couple months. We have implemented, when I say we, I mean K through 12, have implemented almost 500,000. They've got about 500,000 of their devices covered with Relay, and that is significant. To be able to put those on Chromebooks to be able to put those on Windows devices and iOS devices, especially when they're not sitting in your building and they're remote, is a tremendous feat. So we're still working on what we call phase one, and it's coming along really good. So we've actually kind of moved now to thinking about phase two, and phase two is really getting and it's putting the relay service in the best supportable supportable framework and position for your school district and the best ease of use. So currently, right now, most of the Rocket devices that are in your school district are what we call inline. And as long as they are inline, you have to manage policies in two different places. And that has become a real support nightmare for school districts. And what we've seen over the years with districts that have moved to relay early has been the issue with two places to filter or two sets of policies. So moving that out of line is going to be the big part of phase two. And so that means you'll be doing one policy in one place. And for all of your K-12 devices, Chromebooks, Macs, Apples, iOS device or other iOS devices or Windows devices, you will be using the cloud service, what we call Relay. So, David, we've not really done many of those yet. We actually started with Jefferson County, and Jefferson County has moved to phase two, and we are still working with them to get that complete. And then we have a pilot that we have scheduled later this month with the school district that needs to move, and so we're doing that with them. So we're working really closely with Lightspeed to make sure that we have the best implementation of that piece, what we call phase two, and then we can get that done fairly quickly, because I'm really interested in getting that done quickly because of the support nightmare it is for school districts that have that in line after they've moved to relay. So that's just oncoming work. We really, kind of hope to get that done by the end of the summer. We've been, working really hard again with Lightspeed to get that framed up and get that design just perfect for you guys, so it's not a real big issue to deal with, and then you'll have great functionality after that.
Thanks, Phil. I know that, Neil, you were talking about that in your feedback, and so I think that is the big payoff. We saw that, really across the feedback across states so far but I would say for the most part, very complimentary of us moving to relay. Obviously, it went to the homes for the adults and the students, the adults in the district, providing that service. But I do think what you're talking about, Phil, this phase two is really what makes it in the sweet spot for our Kentucky K-12 districts. Instead of trying to manage one, they just manage two, they manage one. So I think that's a good point of clarification. Yep, appreciate that. Is there anything, just for folks looking at Go Soapbox for me, just let me know if there's anything that needs to be addressed that's bubbled up. Mike, can I have you give us an update on our current technology-enabled contracts or just pure EdTech contracts? So I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, I'll do that. But before I do that, I will address a question I saw on the Go Soapbox. I responded to one question about the Ray Baum and CARES Law Act, which we have a question about that we can address at some point here. I don't know how we had that on the agenda. Essentially, we were asking in our question about just districts' awareness of that and have they taken actions yet to address that. So we are interested in a response to those questions. I will tell you that we are learning more about the interpretation and the expected implementation of those in the variety of scenarios that exist in school districts. For those that don't know anything about it, the CARES Law Act was about the fact that you should not have to dial any kind of a prefix. I mean, mainly it was about you should not have to dial any kind of a prefix to dial 911. so that when you dial 911, that's all you have to dial, regardless what kind of a phone system you're on, and prior needs to have a prefix or anything like that. And then the Ray Bomb is more targeted toward more specific information about the actual location of where that 911 call is coming from, the more specific location associated to that. So we will look at that, the results of that question at some point here. And again, we are interested in where people are at with that. And I see
Mike, he's going to bring it up now, the results of that one.
Look at it. So it looks like 22 or 39% have had plans in place to address those needs. 10 are aware and are working on their plans, and 17%, and then 19% are somewhat aware, however, need further guidance and planning. And then we do have 24% that are not very aware of it yet. So that's a pretty good percentage that certainly wants to tune into that. You can certainly do a quick search on both of those and learn a little bit about it. But mainly, it is something we'll need to rely on a lot of guidance and direction from our providers of our phone services and our voice services. So we'll certainly be continuing to look at that and make sure that we're providing guidance and suggestions for districts as they work with their local providers, and certainly anybody that we work with from a state level on behalf of all school districts be addressing those topics further. Another quick thing from the Go Soapbox, we had a question about our continued, and Phil can chime in on this as well, continued upgrading of connectivity based on the influx of devices and so forth. We manage a pretty aggressive program to keep up with the access needs of all school districts. And we try to be as proactive with that. We got several different points that we look at proactively to make sure that we're planning for upgrades. We certainly try to plan for upgrades to where we can utilize and take advantage of the federal E-rate program. However, we have said openly many times, if something happens that we're unable to predict that, and therefore not necessarily able to tie it into the E-rate funding directly, then that will not keep us from acting on a need. So I just want to make that point. But I see a few comments in the question section there on the soapbox that made me think that that a few districts are concerned about having some access issues and so forth. And so the biggest thing I want to make a point of right now is make sure we're aware of that. Your CATS engineer, log a ticket with our CATS service desk and help desk. Because again, our intention is to be very aggressive and proactive in addressing internet access needs for school districts, and to, again, do that proactively. Sometimes we have to react to a situation that arises, and typically those are more service related where we have service issues. But when it comes to what the needs and requirements are, right now we don't have a great concern about our ability to address those from a funding perspective. However, based on the continued growth, we know we will if we're not able to address the funding stream that's required to be able to continue to grow that and maintain that program. So I wanted to speak to that because I seen a question on that and I felt like that needed to be addressed. Now, I'm going to, Phil, did you have anything you wanted to add real quick to that comment on the?
Yeah, Mike, thanks. I think over the summer and since the pandemic started, we have not let up on our bandwidth upgrades and internet upgrades and other improvements that we've made on the KEN network or the CATS network over the last 8 or 10 months. So we continue to look at areas that we can be more, effective and keep uptime, very, very high, and also bandwidth availability very, very high. So we've not let up on any of that, and we continue to be very aggressive, like Mike says, in looking at that and reviewing that and finding areas where we can make improvements, not in just the district to state connection, but also in the total package that we have with AT&T.
Okay,
you can take that off now, Marty. Thank you.
I'll switch real quick to the topic you brought up with me, David, which was the status of some contracts and RFP activities. So I got 3 specific areas that I'll just speak to real quickly. One is the school community nutrition point of sale system. That's an active request for proposal activity that's in process. And I can speak that is, entering the end of the process. Typically, the end of that process is negotiations of to have resulting contracts. So I know that is, past the time of receiving proposals from multiple providers and respondents. And that should be entering a phase of negotiations. I can't speak to how many negotiating with or not what and so forth, but they're reaching the point of being able to work toward awarding a contract. Similar status for the Educator Licensure system, which is a huge, and I say this every time, a huge and massive undertaking of what we're wanting to do there, because we've got a multitude of multiple applications that need to basically be collapsed into a common solution. And that's just a real easy way to say that. Again, that's an active RFP activity that's going on as well. And again, it's entering those last phases of identifying the respondents to work with to hopefully reach agreement on a contract for that product, that service. The other one, the area that I want to speak to, and I sent a notification out to all the CIOs of the districts, as well as the CATS engineers I know are engaging directly with school districts on the networking products and services. We extended, we provided the opportunity for contracts to be extended that were the existing contracts through the end of June. I know that HP and Extreme both acted on that. And Dale chose not to, which was fine. There was no requirement to extend those contracts. I mean, really the only reason to extend those contracts is if those providers had active things going on with districts that they needed more time to be able to complete during this fiscal year. More importantly is the fact that we have an active procurement or a request for proposal open on this area for network products and services, as David mentioned, and actually that closes today. So that's public information that RFP is posted out there, and it closes today. So hopefully all of those respondents will be responding today, or already have, or no later than today. But that contract, or that will allow the opportunity for up to 6 contracts to be awarded. To manufacturer-held contracts, and those manufacturer-held contracts will allow the opportunity for up to 5 agents or resellers to be identified. So there's a lot of opportunity for how these products and services will be able to be offered to districts. Now, the important point on this, and this is part of the note I sent out, and I know the CATS engineers are speaking to districts about, is we're on a pretty tight timeline when you crosswalk that with the E-rate application window, which is currently scheduled to expire or to end March 25th. So upon award of those contracts, that information will become available to districts. Obviously, that's going to induce a flurry of activity from the vendors contacting and working with you all. And you all need to be prepared to do that. I highly encourage, and I know you've heard this from your CATS engineer as well, to be prepared with what it is that you're wanting to plan on filing for and doing in the upcoming fiscal year. So that you're prepared to engage in those conversations quickly, to share that information with those new providers that are going to be available via those contracts, and go through the process of identifying who you'll include in your E-rate applications. So again, good thing, but kind of a challenging thing is that we're going to have good opportunity there and be able to engage in that pretty quickly. And you need to for sure be ready.
Mike, I know we had the last mile contract that was closed in December. I think we have 8, and that was optional for districts to use. That closed. We did infrastructure as service. I think that closed as well. So I think those are all.
That's right. Yeah. There was an opportunity for people to add to that, and that's closed. Yeah.
The last thing I have on our agenda is in previous years, I tried to work in our top 5 accomplishments and things of area improvement and our goals for the next year in this webcast, but it really needs to have its own separate type of thing versus trying to cram it in to this one like we do and try to rush it in. So I'll schedule a separate time to have that discussion and invite certain districts to join us to make sure we're going back and forth, much like I did today, and share some of the things they did, but also I'll give common themes across the state and spend more time on that. Is there any other topics, once again, I ask our staff to go soapbox that we need to hit upon very quickly before we close, or questions? I know you do a pretty good job about answering those as we're actually broadcasting. Is there anything else that you saw that we need to hit upon before we close out?
David, I'd mentioned, and I brought it up during that funding conversation with Esser, but the top kind of bumped up social question is about big ideas or being discussed with that funding. And I just wanted to push again that around the second week of February, there will be an additional kind of upgraded guidance piece that will be posted to the KD website that will give the kind of parameters and big ideas and bumper lanes for the use of that new funding source.
Right. All right. Well, thanks to all for joining us. We'll close out the formal part of the webcast here, and as usual, I'll stay on for additional 10 or 15 minutes for those that want to just join us in an informal setting. Thanks to our districts joining us, Pikeville and Shelby County. Thanks for joining us and your feedback. Hope you all have had a good start to your 2021. And I hope this was a good present for you for 2021 that you were looking forward to since Christmas. And we'll see you all next month. Once again, thank you. Take care.